Okay, so picture this. I show up at my sister's engagement party straight from work wearing like a $10 hoodie. Everyone's staring, whispering, and then there's Marcus, her fiancé, smirking, acting like I don't even exist. My family. They're silently judging me, thinking I've failed at life. But here's the weird part. This little embarrassing moment, it's about to flip everything upside down. Trust me, what happens next? You won't see it coming. Stay tuned because it gets wild. The party was, well, overwhelming. The kind of place that hits you the second you walk in. You know, high ceilings that seem to stretch forever. Walls glimmering with chandeliers so shiny, I swear you could see yourself in them. And the smell, a weird mix of antique wood polish and like a dozen different expensive perfumes all at once. I'd been working for 72 hours straight, moving between time zones, juggling meetings, calls, caffeine doses that probably weren't human safe. And honestly, all I wanted was my bed. But no, here I was, at Sophie's engagement party, straight from the office, still in what Benedict, my CFO, liked to call my crisis uniform a gray $10 hoodie. Faded jeans and sneakers. Comfortable. Yes, but apparently the ultimate statement of failure in my family's eyes. I could see them from across the room, holding court by a massive floor-to-ceiling window that framed the city like a painting. Sophie was there, looking like some kind of princess from a movie, draped in a white silk dress that probably cost more than my first car, flanked by our aunts, uncles, and cousins, all glittering, all poised, all judging. My heart sank a little, even though I tried to ignore it. I'd been living in this work bubble for weeks, closing one brutal acquisition after another. The company had just absorbed a major competitor, and in my world, that was monumental. But in theirs, my clothes said everything. I walked toward them, trying to summon a smile, and the room didn't just quiet down. It popped, every eye locked onto me. I heard my mother's voice, tight, brittle, dripping with that familiar disappointment. "Emma, you came. You look tired." I nodded, barely keeping it together. "I am Mom. It's been a long week." I smiled, kind of weakly. But Sophie's smile faltered instantly. Her eyes sharpened. "Emma, really? You couldn't try just once? It's my engagement party. Look at you. It's embarrassing." I wanted to explain, to say that work had been insane, that I hadn't had a second to think about this party, but my words would have fallen flat, drowned out by the judgment in the room. My uncle snorted, adjusting his bow tie, giving me that look like I was still tinkering with some garage project, still working on those little computer things in your garage. "Emma, really?" I kept quiet. I never tried to explain. Years ago, I had tried to tell them about Helios, about our carbon capture tech and advanced battery storage, and their eyes glazed over. They had this idea that if it wasn't law, medicine, or real estate, it wasn't real work. I was just Emma's hobby. And then there was Marcus. Oh, Marcus? He appeared like some figure in slow motion, an arm around Sophie, moving with all the arrogance that expensive clothes and perfect teeth can buy. He looked me up and down, smirk spreading across his face. "This is her," Sophie whispered, introducing me. "This is my sister, Emma." He chuckled, not kindly. "This is the brilliant older sister." His words dripped with mockery. And then, louder. "For everyone. Rough night. Did you Uber here?" A laugh, sharp from our cousins, punctuated the comment, "and my sister." She just looked away, her cheeks pink with shame, not for him, but for me. And honestly, I was too tired to fight, too tired to remind anyone that the girl in the hoodie had at that very moment, just secured a $9 billion valuation on the company they still thought of as a glorified repair shop. Marcus's smirk lingered as he patted my shoulder with that painful, condescending faux friendliness. Don't bother the servers too much. Champagne is outside your usual price range. And just like that, he steered Sophie away. The laughter resumed, and I stood there, alone in the middle of the party that had suddenly felt like a gallery of judgment. I stayed another 10 minutes, enough to be polite, then slipped out unnoticed. The quiet of my car's electric engine was blissful, a sharp contrast to the buzz inside. Head back against the headrest, I let out a long sigh. Humiliation. Familiar, dull, almost like a background hum in my life. But beneath it, a cold, hard resolve began to build. I had spent years living in the shadows of their perception. They saw a girl in a hoodie, a failure. But I was the one who'd built Helios, quietly and relentlessly, without fanfare, without needing their approval. And yet, here they were, reinforcing the old narrative, blind to the truth. They had forgotten the girl who had stayed home, who had taken care of our mother, who had turned a desperate little garage project into the backbone of half the green energy grids in the country. They didn't see the sleepless nights, the coding marathons, the tiny victories that had turned into billions. They saw only the hoodie, the failure, the family charity case, walking into that room, smelling the perfume and polish, feeling the weight of their judgment pressing down like a physical thing. I realized just how deep the disconnect ran. I was living in the future, building a quiet empire. They were stuck in appearances, social climbing, and cliches. Sophie had it easy compared to me. She'd retreated into fashion, into parties, into a world that made her feel successful while I was in the trenches, literally building the technology that would define a decade of sustainable energy. And the worst part? They thought they were right, that their judgment was fair, that their version of reality was the truth. And Marcus, standing there like some polished movie villain, had played right into it. He saw the hoodie and assumed weakness, ignorance, invisibility. All he saw was the chance to assert his superiority in front of a room full of witnesses. But the universe, as it sometimes does, was about to hand him a dose of reality he wasn't ready for. I just didn't know it yet. All I felt then was that hollow mix of embarrassment, exhaustion, and this strange, creeping satisfaction that I was still, somehow, exactly where I needed to be, even if no one else could see it. That night, the opulence, the judgment, the whispered comments, they were like fuel. I wasn't going to let the narrative of the family hooded failure define me. They had forgotten, or maybe they never knew, who I really was. And here, in that nauseatingly lavish room, I began plotting the quiet, careful steps that would eventually flip the whole story on its head. I don't know if it was pride or just sheer stubbornness, but in that moment, even amidst the sneers and judgment, I felt the first flicker of anticipation. Something was about to change, and I could feel it deep in my bones. The next morning, I was finally able to sleep 10 glorious hours that felt like a miracle after the week I'd had. I was sitting at my kitchen island, coffee in hand, laptop open, reviewing quarterly projections. When my phone buzzed, Sophie? Of course it was Sophie. I sighed, bracing myself, and tapped the speaker. "Hi, Sophie," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Immediately, her voice cut through, sharp, almost shrill. "I cannot believe you. Emma, no. Hello, how are you?" I raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Good morning to you too," I muttered. Her indignation poured through the line like a flood. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? Marcus's parents were there. His boss, he's Mr. Henry Patterson, and you show up in a hoodie, a gray hoodie. Emma. I could feel the irony tightening in my chest, a slow burn that turned quickly into something sharper. It was clean, I said lightly, unable to stop myself from smirking just a little, but she didn't care. That's not the point. You have no respect, none at all. You float through life in your projects and humiliate everyone. Henry even asked if you were struggling, and he offered to connect me with a charity. Wait, did she just say Henry Patterson? My mind spun. That's the CEO of Patterson Capital Investments, the shark. The very man whose office Marcus would be walking into soon. The world tilted a little, the exhaustion and embarrassment from the night before colliding with a sudden, electric realization. Sophie, blissfully unaware, had just handed me a map straight to the perfect opportunity. Marcus was pitching Helios, my company, for a multi-million-dollar investment on Monday, and he had no idea who he was dealing with. I blinked, letting the words settle. This was insane. Just hours ago, he had mocked me, treated me like invisible furniture. And now, he was walking into my boardroom asking for my money, not realizing that the very woman he had ridiculed held all the cards. My mind raced. The humiliation from the party, which had felt so heavy, now felt strangely light, almost irrelevant, as a plan began to form, clear and sharp. I took a slow breath, my hands wrapped around the mug, staring out the window. This was not just personal. It was leverage, pure, unfiltered leverage. He had treated me as nothing, and he was about to step into a room where that nothing was the most powerful presence. I could already see the boardroom in my mind, the polished table. Benedict to my right, Henry Patterson watching from the screen, and Marcus, confident, smirking, completely unaware. It was the perfect storm, and yet, beneath the thrill, there was tension. I knew the risks. Marcus could screw this up in ways that might embarrass Sophie or shake things unexpectedly, but my focus sharpened. This wasn't about revenge, it was about strategy, precision, the kind of calculated, silent satisfaction that comes from knowing the truth and letting it unfold. Every misstep he made, every false assumption, would land exactly where it should. I sent a quick text to Benedict. My CFO, can you send me the full due diligence package on the Patterson Capital pitch for Monday? I want to review it myself this weekend. Almost immediately, he replied, Everything okay? Thought you were taking the weekend off? I typed back calmly, almost teasingly. Change of plans. I'll be leading the Monday meeting. Even as I spoke, my mind replayed the party, the hoodie, Marcus's smirk, the polite but sharp laughter from my cousins. All of it had built a perfect narrative in their minds, Emma. The struggling sister, unimportant, irrelevant. And yet, that narrative was about to crumble. Without me having to lift a finger beyond preparation, I leaned back in my chair, a small, quiet smile tugging at my lips. The irony was delicious. The very person who had made a point of humiliating me would soon discover the exact opposite of what he expected. I took another sip of coffee, letting the moment stretch. This was more than a chance to assert authority. It was a test of foresight, intelligence, and patience. Marcus thought he had it all figured out. He had no clue. And as much as the humiliation of yesterday still stung, the excitement of tomorrow, the potential, the power, the truth was intoxicating. I was no longer the girl in the hoodie. I was the woman who had built an empire in silence. And soon, Marcus would realize exactly who that empire belonged to. Looking back, it all started when I was 19. I was in my sophomore year at a top-tier university on a full-ride scholarship for physics. which, you know, should have felt like the golden ticket. But life had other plans. Our mother got sick, brutal, fast-moving cancer, and the doctors gave her 6 months. 6 months to watch everything we knew get ripped away. Dad had passed years earlier, leaving us with, well, not much. Just a modest life insurance policy and a house that was slowly falling apart. Sophie, my little sister, was 14, already caught up in the whirl of school and friends. I couldn't leave. Someone had to be there for Mom. So I dropped out. I stayed home, and for the next year, I learned to administer IV drips, manage her pain medications, and most importantly, be there when she needed me, holding her hand as she faded. I didn't think about college anymore. I didn't think about what I was missing. I only thought about survival, about keeping her comfortable. Sophie, to be fair, couldn't handle it either. She buried herself in schoolwork, summer programs abroad, the world of teenagers who just wanted to escape reality. I didn't blame her. She was a kid. I was the older sister. Responsibility fell on me, and I carried it, quiet and uncomplaining. When Mom passed, there was little left. $50,000 in savings, the house, modest belongings. Sophie took her half for university in London, fashion shows, the glamorous life she seemed destined for. I took my half and stayed in the garage of our old home, the one we could barely afford. Every day. I soldered circuit boards, wrote code, and tried to turn this tiny inheritance into something meaningful, something that could survive without anyone noticing. For 5 years, I lived on instant noodles and desperation, pouring every ounce of energy into an idea I had conceived in my physics classes, a method for hyper-efficient utility-scale battery storage. Freelance coding gigs kept the lights on, paid for components, and allowed me to keep the dream alive. When Sophie came home for the holidays, I was the embarrassing oil-stained smudge in the family photos. She was in designer clothes, talking about her glamorous friends and life abroad. And there I was, crouched over a workbench, my hands blackened with solder, completely invisible in the world they all valued. "When are you going to give up this thing, Emma, and get a real job?" she'd ask. Nose wrinkled at the mess scattered across my table, I would murmur, "It's close." Eyes still fixed on the schematic. My work, my sacrifices, my entire trajectory didn't exist in their minds. They had a story about me, a narrative set in stone. I was the dropout, the failure, the eccentric girl tinkering in the garage. Sophie was the cosmopolitan success. I was the stagnant one. That was the family perception, and it never matched reality. Then, slowly, it started to shift. I had a breakthrough. I solved the energy loss problem, and soon after, I secured my first patent. Within 6 months, I had venture capital, and 2 years later, Helios was born. It was quiet at first, nothing flashy, no penthouses, no designer labels, just relentless work, clever engineering, and a vision that I refused to let go of. 5 years in, we were profitable. 10 years later, Helios was a quiet giant in the sustainable energy sector, powering half the green energy grids in the country. Still, I never told them it wasn't a secret, exactly. Though I had tried at first, I'd casually mention a big contract or a new office, and their response would always deflate any hint of pride. "That's nice. Dear, did you hear Sophie is modeling for a magazine in Paris? Success?" In their eyes, didn't look like what I had built. It didn't come with fashion shows, champagne flutes, or social media clout. It came in patents, employees, and grids silently humming with energy my teams had harnessed. My wealth was silent, invisible to the people who thought they knew me. Sometimes I would catch myself imagining them reacting, if they really saw it, if they understood the scale of what I'd created. But then I would shrug it off. Their opinion had become white noise. I had bigger problems, bigger goals, And that's how I lived immersed in work, in the beauty of creation, and entirely separate from their shallow measurements of success. Every board meeting, every deal closed, every new patent, these were my triumphs. Not the applause at a party or the nods from a family that still thought hoodies meant failure. The contrast between the life I was building and the life they believed I had was stark. While Sophie paraded through social gatherings, fashion shows, and European parties, I was mapping the energy future in a tiny apartment, surrounded by soldering irons, stacks of schematics, and endless nights fueled by caffeine and stubborn determination. My body ached. My hands were stained with grease and ink, and sleep was an occasional visitor. Yet I felt alive in a way no gala ever made me feel. I was creating something that mattered, something lasting. They had no idea. And that ignorance felt both isolating and strangely empowering. And the story didn't stop there. As Helios grew, the gulf widened. I kept things understated, living modestly, choosing hoodies and comfort over status symbols. My company expanded quietly. Acquisitions, innovations, the building blocks of an empire stitched together with sleepless nights and single-minded focus. I watched Sophie through social media, glimpses of parties and fashion events, the world applauding her, while my work, my real tangible work, went unnoticed by them. They didn't understand it, couldn't see it, and I stopped trying. It was pointless to explain $1 billion energy infrastructure to people who measured success by appearances. Even when they laughed at me, called me a failure, or mocked my choices, I let it slide. Not because I didn't care it burned, of course it did, but because I had built something stronger, something untouchable. They had crafted a narrative, a comforting fiction that allowed them to believe they were superior. I, meanwhile, had constructed reality from scratch, one wire, one code line, one prototype at a time. And the more they judged, the more absurd their version of events became. Every mocking word, every side glance, every whispered comment at a party or family gathering, it all accumulated like fuel. Not for anger, exactly, but for clarity, for focus. I wasn't going to argue about hoodies or appearances. I was going to let the truth of my work, my life, speak for itself. That's what Helios became. My defiance made manifest. A multi-billion-dollar company, grounded in real technology, real change, and real impact. I had taken grief, ridicule, exhaustion, and transformed it into something unstoppable. Every challenge, every moment of doubt, every sideways glance from a family that didn't understand, each became a stepping stone. I realized, quietly, that validation didn't have to come from anyone else. It came from knowing what I had built, what I had survived, and the empire I had turned from a garage project into a force in the sustainable energy world. And for all the parties, the judgment, the sneers, the condescension, they were irrelevant. I had created a life and a company that couldn't be dismissed. And no hoodie, no fashion statement, no shallow opinion could touch that. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear, and I found myself standing in front of my full-length mirror, thinking, okay, let's make this subtle but unforgettable. I could have gone with the sharp, tailored power suit I usually reserved for big negotiations, the kind that screams CEO, but I decided against it. Instead, I picked a dark gray cashmere turtleneck, black tailored trousers, and flat, elegant leather shoes. Professional, understated, comfortable me. I wanted Marcus to see the same woman from the party before he saw the CEO, the quiet, overlooked Emma, the one he'd mocked so casually. Let him underestimate me first. That would be fun. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the anticipation settle in. There's a peculiar thrill in knowing the cards are in your hands while the other person is blissfully unaware of the game. Benedict, my CFO, was waiting in my office, the smell of his morning coffee mixing with the faint whiff of tweed. He handed me a cup, his expression a mix of amusement and caution. "Emma," he said, a little smirk tugging at his lips. "You look rested," which is terrifying. Means you're about to dismantle someone. I laughed quietly. "Good morning, Benedict." "You're not wrong," I said, letting the humor diffuse the tension. He shook his head, clearly enjoying the fact that he'd seen this coming from miles away. We had been through the highs and lows together, from garage days to boardrooms, and he knew me well. He also knew I thrived in these moments, when strategy and subtlety intersected perfectly. We walked toward the boardroom, and I allowed myself a brief moment to enjoy the irony. Marcus had no idea. He had no clue that the casual, quietly dressed woman he'd ridiculed over a hoodie was about to take control of a room in a way he couldn't even imagine. I felt a little thrill. Not malicious exactly, but satisfying. This was the universe correcting its balance. And I was just the facilitator. Inside the Heliostack campus, I noticed the familiar details, the minimalist lines of the architecture, the soft hum of the energy-efficient systems, the quiet professionalism that contrasted so sharply with the opulence of the party the night before. I allowed myself a small internal chuckle. Not a penthouse, not a party, just substance. This was my domain, and Marcus had wandered straight into it without realizing the full scope. Benedict leaned over as we entered the boardroom. "Curious why you're taking this one personally?" he asked. I took a deep breath, letting the calm wash over me, a practiced stillness that I relied on when stakes were high. "Let's call it a matter of family interest," I said lightly, and he raised an eyebrow, knowing exactly what that meant. Family, yes, but also principle. This was bigger than pride. This was about ensuring integrity in a deal that was going to cross my desk, and it just happened to intersect with someone who thought hoodies were the pinnacle of failure. I reviewed the materials Benedict had prepared for me one last time, scanning the pitch deck, making mental notes about every weak point, every potential flaw. I let myself think about the angle I would take, the questions that would cut through the polished rhetoric, the way to dismantle hubris without appearing aggressive. Marcus didn't know it yet, but he was about to learn what happens when assumptions meet reality. As I adjusted the turtleneck, I smiled to myself. There's a power in simplicity, a quiet authority that doesn't need bluster or showmanship. Every movement, every glance, every measured word would be a statement. I was calm, poised, but my mind raced with excitement. Not for revenge, exactly, but for the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. I could almost hear Marcus's confident smirk melting the moment he realized that the quiet woman sitting at the head of the table was, in fact, the person whose judgment and approval determined the fate of his proposal. Benedict gave me one last nod before the team from Patterson Capital arrived. "Audio's perfect," I said. "I want every word heard clearly." His eyes twinkled, understanding both the humor and the gravity of what was about to unfold. And I stood there, taking a final sip of coffee, allowing my quiet, calculated calm to settle into every fiber of my being. Marcus had no idea that the real meeting hadn't even started yet, and by the time it did, the entire boardroom and his assumptions would be turned upside down. Marcus walked into the boardroom like he owned the place, swagger, perfectly pressed navy suit, and a confidence that was almost comical. He didn't even glance at me, which, honestly, was fine. Let him think I was just furniture or an intern taking notes. He strode straight to Benedict, our CFO, the only other man in a suit, and shook his hand with that overpracticed charm that made me want to roll my eyes. "Marcus," he said, introducing himself like the room hadn't already been informed of his presence. "Great to finally meet this setup." He gestured around vaguely. acknowledging Henry Patterson on the video link as if the screen were a minor inconvenience. I settled into my seat, calm, neutral, letting him think he had the upper hand. He plugged in his laptop, and the title screen of his pitch flashed across the wall, "The Future of Green and Impact Fund." His voice, smooth and rehearsed, began to fill the room. "Gentlemen and lady," he said, with a dismissive nod my way, as if I were just another object in the room. "What we are about to show you is not just an investment, it is a revolution." I let him talk, leaning back, hands steepled, face unreadable. 20 minutes passed, and Marcus paced, gesturing, gesticulating, whatever that was, using every buzzword in the corporate lexicon: synergy, disruption, paradigm shift. He painted a glittering picture of a future where his fund would solve the energy crisis and deliver a 40% return to investors. Every word, every glance, every pause was directed at Benedict or the screen where Henry Patterson observed with rapt attention. And me invisible. Just a quiet, unassuming presence. I had to admit, part of me was entertained. The oblivious arrogance, the total blind spot for my authority, it was almost like watching a child play at a game they didn't understand. He had no idea that the woman in the cashmere turtleneck was the one calling the shots here. He assumed invisibility based on bias, nothing more. The unconscious bias was breathtaking in its clarity. He didn't even consider that I might understand, evaluate, and challenge every claim he made. He assumed that because I wasn't reacting, I didn't matter. I let the irony sink in. A small, private amusement I kept to myself. And then he hit the crown jewel. With a dramatic click, a glossy image of a solar panel filled the screen. "This," he said, voice brimming with pride, "is our revolutionary photovoltaic technology from SunSpark Innovations. It will render all current models obsolete, 50% more efficient, 30% cheaper to produce, and we have exclusive rights." He paused, letting the room absorb the weight of his announcement, and I could see the confidence radiating from him, the certainty that he had nailed it. I, on the other hand, remained still, studying the slides, watching the movement in his shoulders, the overextension of his gestures, the subtle cracks in his presentation. Everything was just so absurd. He had constructed a narrative that seemed brilliant on the surface but fell apart under the light of scrutiny, and he didn't even know it. I could almost see him imagining me as a passive observer, completely disconnected from the analysis, and it was maddening in the most delicious way. His hubris, his polished performance, was feeding directly into my strategy. Every overstatement, every dramatic flourish gave me insight into exactly where his pitch was vulnerable. And while he spoke, I couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between him and the reality of what I had built. He was all shine, no substance, perfect for social media, perfect for impressing parties, completely unprepared for a boardroom that relied on facts, data, and verification. SunSpark Innovations. I knew them. I had vetted them personally 6 months ago. Their tech was flawed, overheating, high failure rates, CEO under investigation, and yet, here he was, acting as though he'd discovered the greatest leap in energy since the lithium-ion battery. I leaned forward slightly, just enough to adjust my posture, eyes scanning every number on the slides, every claim, every assumption he made. This was absurdity wrapped in confidence, a bubble of overestimation and ignorance, and I was the quiet storm about to puncture it. Marcus was unaware, completely, utterly, that he was building the narrative of his own undoing. Every minute he continued, the tension in the room escalated. Benedict's calm composure, the attentive faces of the board members on the screen, it all created the perfect stage. The ridiculousness of the situation wasn't lost on me. The man who had mocked my $10 hoodie, who had judged me, my family, and my perceived worth, was now standing in front of the very person whose judgment would determine the fate of his $1 million fund. Every boast he made, every eye roll he expected from me, every condescending glance he imagined he could toss aside, it was fuel, evidence, a blueprint of arrogance that would crumble the moment I spoke. And I waited, patiently, calmly, hands steepled, expression neutral, eyes fixed on the screen. The absurdity was almost cinematic, Marcus, full of fire and smoke, and me, silent, collecting every word, every misstep, every inch of his overconfidence, filing it away. It was suspense, thick and palpable, the kind that hums under your skin, the tension of knowing that the moment of truth is approaching, and he has no idea how it's going to hit. For the first time, the boardroom's air felt electric, charged not by his claims, but by the potential for exposure. And I allowed myself a small, private smirk, invisible to him, but not to myself. He was playing his grand show, utterly blind to the fact that his audience, the real decision maker, was watching, analyzing, and ready to intervene at the perfect moment. I could almost hear my own internal monologue, quietly noting, "Enjoy the show, Marcus. You're about to meet reality." Every word he spoke, every confident flourish, made the room tighter, the stakes higher, and the tension sweeter. And then was, with that final slide and flourish, he finished. He looked at us, waiting for the applause, the approval, the inevitable nod of success. I sat, still calm, still neutral. The room held its breath. He had delivered a pitch he thought was flawless, brilliant, and revolutionary. The absurdity of it all, the blind arrogance, the unearned confidence, the total ignorance of who actually controlled the room was nearly palpable. And I smiled, quietly, inside myself, knowing the intervention was about to begin. Marcus had just walked straight into a storm he couldn't see coming. I finally spoke. My hands unfolded from their steepled position, resting flat on the table, and I looked directly at Marcus. "I have a question, Mr. Last name," I said, calm, deliberate. The words cut through the room like a knife. Marcus, physically startled, clearly forgetting I was there. As if a chair had suddenly spoken, his face shifted from confident to confused, then to a flicker of panic. "Yes," he asked, drawing the word out, eyes darting nervously. "You mentioned SunSpark Innovations," I said, my voice steady. "Can you tell me about their CEO, Thomas Riley?" Marcus blinked, a split second too slow. "Mr. Riley, he's a visionary, a brilliant mind. We're confident in his leadership," he said, a bit too quickly. I leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on him. Are you aware that Mr. Riley is currently the subject of a federal investigation for wire fraud and misrepresenting technology to investors?" Color drained from his face. His carefully constructed mask of confidence was cracking. "That's a baseless rumor," he stammered. I tapped my laptop. "Your due diligence seems to have missed the official filing from the Southern District of New York. We also ran our own independent analysis of the technology 6 months ago. It doesn't work. Your crown jewel, Mr. Last name, is a dud." Marcus sputtered. His voice rose in panic. "You don't know what you're talking about. Our internal numbers are solid." I clicked my mouse, voice calm, unshakable. "Your numbers are not just optimistic, they're fictional. You've built a proposal based on a technology that will never be approved for market. You are either profoundly incompetent or knowingly fraudulent. Which is it?" He looked around frantically, eyes wide. "You have no right," he started, voice breaking. I interrupted with the same level, calm and precise. "Mr. Last name, You assumed I was the assistant, the secretary, invisible in this room, but I am the CEO, and your assumptions were wrong, all of them. He turned desperately to Benedict, the only other man in the room in a suit. Are you going to let her sabotage this? Benedict didn't even look at him. He just kept his eyes on me, a faint smile playing at his lips. The room felt impossibly still. Every breath, every hum of the air conditioning heightened the tension. Henry Patterson's face on the screen was stone, his gaze fixed, eyes narrowing. "Marcus," he said sharply, voice cutting like glass. "Answer the woman's question." Marcus's face went white. The smug, confident persona evaporated in an instant. He stammered, I... He couldn't finish. His team of junior analysts shuffled nervously, eyes wide, glancing at me like I was some storm about to hit. Their laptops clutched too tightly, their hands trembling just slightly, every second stretched, taut, the air thick with expectation. I let the silence hang. "Mr. Marcus, last name," I said, voice leveled, cutting with precision. "My name is Emma Evans. I am the founder, CEO, and chairwoman of Helios. I am the decision maker here." The room absorbed that, and you could see Marcus's confidence evaporate entirely. He turned slightly, disbelief etched on his face. I continued, slow and deliberate, letting the words land. The rumor I mentioned came from our legal team while preparing to sue SunSpark for attempting to sell us that same fraudulent technology. You, sir, have just walked into a room without doing your homework, underestimating the very person whose approval your proposal depends on. Marcus's jaw dropped. His analysts exchanged panicked glances. Benedict leaned back slightly, letting the moment settle. I clicked my laptop to pull up the specific documents, court filings, and data from our 6-month independent analysis, the numbers, the dates, the flaws. It was all there, irrefutable. Marcus's eyes darted between the screen and me, sweat starting to bead at his hairline. "Now," I said, voice calm, every syllable deliberate. "Let's go back to your numbers. Explain to me and to Mr. Patterson why you are pitching a multi-million-dollar fund based on a lie." The room was silent. He looked like a fish pulled from water, gulping, faltering under the simplest scrutiny. Every claim, every assertion he made had been carefully documented, cross-checked, and laid bare. His credibility was crumbling in real time. The data, the team, it was, he stammered, floundering for words. I raised an eyebrow. "Your team. Did you personally vet this? Did you run the tests? Or did you just read a marketing brochure and believe it because it looked impressive?" Silence. He had no answer. His arrogance had become a trap, and I was guiding him effortlessly into the consequences. "Emma," he blurted finally, voice cracking. Did you?" I softened my voice slightly. Still clinical, precise. "You didn't do the work. You saw a shiny object and..." I paused, letting the weight of it sink in. "You wrapped it in buzzwords and brought it here, asking for $100 million from the very company whose CEO you assumed would be invisible. Did you think anyone would be fooled?" Henry Patterson's face on the screen was thunderous. The man's expression radiated shock, anger, disbelief. Marcus attempted a weak, desperate lunge, saying, "We know each other. I'm engaged to your sister. This is personal." The absurdity of the statement hung in the room like smoke. My patience, worn thin over 20 years of condescension and underestimation, snapped slightly. "Marcus, it is not personal," I said evenly. "It is business. Your proposal is a house of cards. You either misled us or were careless. Either way, we do not invest in that." The junior analysts behind him seemed ready to disappear under the table. Their panic was palpable, eyes darting, hands shaking. Marcus, realizing the full gravity, swayed, grabbing the table for support. "Sir," he said, voice trembling. "I had no idea." Henry Patterson's voice cut sharply through the room. "Marcus, is what she says true?" Marcus flailed, pathetic and desperate. "Sir, it's a misunderstanding. She's biased." But Henry was done with excuses. His attention focused on the reality, on the evidence, and the truth of Emma Evans, the quiet CEO who had been invisible at the party. "It is your responsibility to know who you are pitching to," Henry barked. "You embarrassed your firm. We are done here." The screens went dark one by one, leaving only me, Benedict, and the two remaining members of Marcus's team. Marcus's face was a ruin of sweat, disbelief, and panic. I said quietly, cutting through the remnants of his bravado, "The meeting is over. Leave." He didn't move, mouth opening and closing, before finally deflating and stumbling out, leaving the room in silence. Benedict exhaled a long whistle. "Well," he said slowly, "that was efficient." I closed my laptop, letting the weight of the professional victory settle. Not triumph, not gloating, just necessary, clean, precise. Marcus was finished. Helios's authority had been established. I leaned back, calm, collected, and allowed the room to settle into quiet after the storm. The humiliation, panic, and absurdity had played out exactly as it needed, and all that remained was clarity. The truth had been exposed, the incompetent unmasked, and the power, the real power, restored to its rightful place. After Marcus left, the professional part was over, but the personal part was just beginning. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Sophie, of course. I let it ring a few times, taking a deep breath before answering. "Hello? Sophie, what did you do?" I asked. Calm, frozen lake, calm. On the other end came a raw, primal scream of rage. "What did you do to him? Emma, he's crying." I let a small, quiet smile form. "Good morning, Sophie. I'm in a meeting. Is this important, or is this you freaking out?" Silence, then sharp, ragged breaths. "Finally," she whispered, almost inaudibly, struggling to comprehend. "You're your company," I nodded. "Yes, Helios, the little garage project you thought was nothing. That's my company, and the $100 million he asked for, that's my decision to approve. Not his, not yours, mine." I could hear her intake of breath, disbelief colliding with realization. The world she had built, her sense of superiority, her assumptions about success was crumbling. Marcus, the man she had adored as brilliant, had been shown the hard truth, and I had done my job, not for revenge, exactly, but for clarity, for truth. Later that week, she stepped out of the elevator into my apartment. Not in a flashy outfit, not posing for social media, just in sweatpants, messy hair, red-rimmed eyes. She looked small, vulnerable, real. She scanned the minimalist space, the wall of books, the expansive view. "This is where you live?" she whispered. I gestured casually. "This is where I live. Coffee." She nodded, sinking into the sofa as I poured 2 mugs. We sat across from each other in silence for a long stretch, the hum of the city below the only sound. No words, just presence. Finally, she asked, voice barely above a whisper, "Why were you so nice about it? All those years I was horrible to you, called you a failure, humiliated you. Why didn't you ever throw it in our faces?" I thought about it. I tried at first, sure, but you don't throw truth at people who won't hear it. And then I was busy building, busy surviving, busy creating something that actually mattered. I shrugged lightly. What you thought of me, it stopped mattering. It only started to matter when Marcus came into the picture. He brought arrogance and lies into my world. Then I had to act. Before that, your opinions were noise, nothing more. She flinched, tears welling, voice trembling. He was a fool, she admitted, almost to herself. Yes, I said gently. He was. And I was patient too, all these years, because the world moves slowly so, and people sometimes don't see the truth until it's undeniable. She shook her head, looking at me with raw understanding dawning. I was so obsessed with appearances, with status, thinking you had none, and it turns out you had everything, quietly. You didn't need to show it. I reached over, put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned in, just like she used to when we were kids. And she cried, not in rage, not for Marcus, but for the lost years, for misunderstandings, for a sibling bond that had been buried under assumptions and envy. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a complete fix, but it was a beginning, a real human beginning. Over the following weeks, Sophie adjusted. She moved into a smaller, more normal apartment, sold the flashy condo, started a real job in marketing for a nonprofit. Our aunts and uncles still didn't fully understand what I did, but the word failure stopped being attached to me. Mostly they were just confused, which honestly was fine. As for me, I found peace. Vindication hadn't come from destroying Marcus's career. It had come from this, from truth, from clarity, from finally being seen for who I was. I could sit in my hoodie, on my couch, knowing my sister now truly understood, and that was enough. Quiet success, personal integrity, and family bonds, fragile but starting to heal, that, in the end, was everything. And that's how it all unfolded: quiet persistence. Long nights and a little patience turn the tables completely. Sometimes success isn't loud, it's steady, invisible to some, but undeniable when it counts. Emma's story is a reminder that resilience and staying true to yourself can speak louder than any judgment or mockery. If this story inspired you, consider hitting like or subscribing so you won't miss more tales of quiet victories and real-life twists. It's always worth seeing who's really in control.